But isn't that interesting that we train so hard for something that may or may not occur, yet we give no thought to what is truly killing our brothers and sisters in uniform? Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer, where armor is forged through mental, spiritual, and physical preparation. Welcome, friends, fellow law enforcement officers, firefighters, and all of those on the front line. You're listening to episode 2 of Frontline Fitness with Carl Wimmer. On July 7th, 2016, at approximately 20:58 hours, Micah Xavier Johnson parked his SUV kind of awkwardly on Lamar Street, directly in front of El Centro College in downtown Dallas, Texas. Leaving the hazard lights blinking, he surveyed the empty streets to the left and to the right, looking and taking it all in. The streets were empty in anticipation of a protest that was scheduled later that evening. The only people in the street at that point were small groups of law enforcement officers who had arrived on scene in preparation for the protest. Micah Johnson took a position of cover at the street level, leveled his Sega AK-47 at the nearest group of law enforcement officers, and began to fire. Johnson, who was militarily trained, eventually took cover in a building, and negotiations ensued for the next several hours. At around 2 a.m., negotiations deteriorated to the point where law enforcement was absolutely certain that Johnson was going to be a hazard to the lives of many of the people who were in the surrounding rooms and hallways from where he was held up. At about 2:30 in the morning, using a bomb squad robot, law enforcement officers attached a small amount of C4 explosive to the robot, maneuvered the robot in close proximity to Johnson, and detonated the C4, ending the standoff and ending the life of Micah Xavier Johnson. Johnson would go down as infamous as the worst cop killer since the attacks on September 11th, 2001, with 5 police officers murdered and 9 severely wounded. This single episode captured the nation as it unfolded in front of them. It was a tragedy, heartbreaking, and many law enforcement brothers and sisters lost their lives that day. Of course, that pales in comparison to what happened during the terrorist attacks of September 11th, where the single deadliest day in the history of our country regarding law enforcement officers and firefighters ensued, as so many heroes rushed into the trade centers to rescue people who they didn't even know. Firefighters, police officers, frontline workers, loving others more than their own self and their own safety. We marvel at the loss of life. We marvel at the heroism. But what should really cause us to stop and think, my friends, is the fact that 9/11, Micah Xavier Johnson, neither of these two individual single incidents is the most proficient killer of law enforcement officers or firefighters in America. The single most brutal, most violent, most compassionless, most heartless killer in the history of the world when it comes to law enforcement and firefighters is heart disease. You know, I think about all the training that I received as a police officer. From day one of the Law Enforcement Academy, they are talking to you about officer survival, street smart, street survival, surviving a violent attack, surviving under any circumstances. And we train our minds and we train our bodies to prepare ourselves for situations that may or may never come. I can't tell you how many draw strokes I did in the near 25 years that I was a law enforcement officer. Every day, as I would prepare to go to work, I'd put on my uniform, I'd put on my gun belt, I'd make sure that there was no live ammunition, and I would practice 10 or 15 draw strokes from my holster, making sure that I was quick and fast and efficient. I oftentimes liken myself to the man with no name, Clint Eastwood, in all of his spaghetti westerns. And I tried to be as fast, and I got very, very fast with my handgun. All that preparation for an incident that may or may not occur. But isn't that interesting that we train so hard for something that may or may not occur, yet we give no thought to what is truly killing our brothers and sisters in uniform? Fascinating to me. If you knew without question that there was a violent criminal on the streets in your city, in your jurisdiction, and you had his picture, and you had his picture up in your patrol room, and you talked about him, and you talked about how this person would absolutely kill you if given the chance, how much hypervigilance, how much vigilance would you use until that cop killer was behind bars? You would make sure of your surroundings. You'd keep your head on a swivel looking for this cop killer and doing everything you can to make sure that he doesn't get you. Yet we have a cop killer, a firefighter killer that is right in front of us, and we do so little to prevent it from killing us. According to a 2022 article in Police One, police officers are 25 times more likely to die from a heart attack than they are from a violent encounter with a criminal. 25 times more likely. And we know this is true. I'm telling you, as I mentioned in the introduction, we get out of the police academy and we're usually in our best physical condition. You get out of the fire academy and you're usually in your best physical condition. You get a job and things start to roll. Speaking from the law enforcement perspective, the law enforcement side of things, I can't tell you how many pieces of body armor I went through sizing up over the years. You first get your job, you get your first job, and you put your vest on, and it fits nice. You look good. You got broad shoulders, a thin waist, and you're ready to take on the world. About 5 years later, your hair's starting to thin out, your shoulders are starting to thin out, and your waist is starting to really expand. We call those patrol pounds. riding around in our car all day long, eating fast food, dealing with the stress of the job, dealing with shift work, not prioritizing our health, not prioritizing physical fitness. Because, frankly, it's kind of hard. It was hard to get into shape, and it's so easy to get out of shape. And then as you're going along, you put the vest on to go to work, and, well, I don't know if you're anything like me, but you start oozing out of this thing, like, right? You put the Velcro on, and bulges start popping out of any opening. And I got to ask you, law enforcement officers, you can comment below, is there anything more uncomfortable than the body armor? You sit down, it pinches your fat gut, pinches your love handles. It always rides up, it chokes you, it gets hot. Horrible. And there's nothing worse. The only thing worse is one that doesn't fit you well. And so you live with that for a little while, denying the fact that you've put on 20 pounds until it's time for another one, and they upgrade you. They get you a bigger one. And by the time you finished your career, you've gone through 4 or 5 or 6 of these things. And in most cases, it's because you've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and you've put on 20, 40, 60, 100 pounds that wasn't there when you graduated the police academy. I know, my friends. I know. Because I went all the way up to a size 46 waist, weighing over 300 pounds. I was strong, but I was in terrible condition. Don't ask me to run more than a few 100 feet at a time at top speed. My health was not good. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, probably pre-diabetic, but never had it tested. Sleep apnea, that just comes with the territory of being that heavy. Can you relate to that? Does this sound familiar to any of you? Gaining those patrol pounds? Man, we used to have on my patrol shift, me and old Officer Garrett, we were good buddies, and we used to have this thing called nacho night. Oh, it's a nacho night. And usually it would happen if after an exciting call, we had a situation one night where he was arresting a DUI. He was going through field sobriety tests. I was the backup officer, and the guy decided to grab his gun and try to disarm my partner. We got in a good fight, and we got him cuffed up, no problems. But after he goes off it takes him to jail and books him for multiple charges. It was nacho night, and off we go to the convenience store, little gas station, and we have nachos. If you work patrol in any kind of city that is small, any kind of city that isn't a large metropolitan area like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, your options of where you can go eat at night are very limited. In many cases, many of you are limited to Burger King, McDonald's, maybe a gas station hamburgers or hot dogs. All of this garbage food that contributes to gaining weight, putting on the patrol pounds. You add into that the stress of the career. It is now almost universally accepted that a lack of sleep or interrupted sleep contributes to a decline in health. You think, people say, oh, I only need 5 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep. No. It's like saying you need 1 glass of water a day. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. You need a good 7 to 8 to 9 hours of good restful sleep, going through at least 2 cycles, sleep cycles, REM cycles, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I've researched it enough to know you need sleep, and you need good sleep. But on shift work, that is difficult. Firefighters, it's impossible. Sure, you get to sleep on the job. You get to sleep at the firehouse. Do you really? How many times are you getting called out in the middle of the night and your sleep is broken up? You get an hour here, maybe 3 hours here, maybe 2.5 hours here, and then a half hour here, and then it's morning time. Time to wake up and make those bacon and eggs and whatever it is you're going to cook that day, whatever you're going to make, unless you order a pizza. Everything snowballs and adds up. And before you know it, you're dealing with obesity. You're dealing with all of the side effects of obesity. You're dealing with the effects of a sedentary lifestyle. And then what comes with that? Low back pain, low back injuries. It doesn't end. One thing leads to another. There's much debate about the lifespan of law enforcement officers and firefighters. But according to atraxialaw.com, the life expectancy for firefighters is 10 years less than for individuals with other occupations. And as you read into the studies, it is not because firefighters are dying of fires. It is because 70% of firefighters are considered overweight or obese. But the news gets worse for our law enforcement officers. According to a recent study conducted by John M. Violante, PhD at the University of Buffalo, they researched law enforcement officers and the sickness and the lifespan of law enforcement officers, and they came to the conclusion that law enforcement officers have a life expectancy of 22 years less. 22 years less than the average citizen. Our firefighters and our police officers are living shorter lives, and that's just lifespan. If you pay any attention at all to some of the leading experts on longevity in the world today, such as Dr. Peter Attia, he likes to distinguish between lifespan and health span. Lifespan, he says, is very binary. You're either alive or you're dead. That is lifespan. Your heart is either beating or it is not. Your brain is either sending out signals or it's not. Okay, that's lifespan. But health span is the span of life for which you have very little disease, for which you have a prosperous life. Don't we all want that? How many law enforcement officers work their entire career looking forward to retirement just to retire into a life of disease and despair? How many firefighters do the same thing? I've known a lot. Raise your hand if you know firefighters and police officers who retired and then died within a few years, or spent the next several years of their life in and out of doctors' offices. Their dreams of traveling the world and visiting loved ones and enjoying retirement instead was filled with visiting doctors, going to see this doctor, going to visit this doctor. It became their hobby. They didn't become golfers. They became habitual doctor hoppers. It needs to stop. Heart attacks and atherosclerosis, heart disease in general, is killing more law enforcement officers and more firefighters than any other cause. Any other cause. If you take law enforcement officers, this same study by Dr. John Violante, if you take the studies and the research that he and his fellows have conducted, they talk about the amount of heart attacks and the amount of heart disease that is within law enforcement and the amount of people who are dying from heart attacks and heart disease. And it is astronomically higher than any other cause of death. Yet we don't train for that. You go to the firearms range at least twice a year, I hope. I hope you're going a lot more than that. But hopefully your department requires 2 or 4 times a year. Quarterly would be best. And hopefully you go more than that. Preparing for what? Preparing for a deadly encounter, a deadly force situation, and that is good. But we, for some reason, we disregard the thing that will actually be the thing that is a much bigger threat to us. Our fat gut. The patrol pounds. The firehouse fat. Those things are what's really dangerous for us. We know all of our equipment really well, inside and out. But it's the ticker that we neglect. Firefighters. Heart attack is a leading cause of death for firefighters on duty. On duty. It's not fires. It's not smoke inhalation. Raise your hand if you've had smoke inhalation. I have. I was one of those blue canaries that went rushing into a fire thinking I was going to save the world before the firefighters showed up. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I had to go to the hospital for smoke inhalation. But that's not the leading killer. It's heart attacks for firefighters. It's heart attacks for police officers. And we need to do something about it. We need to attack the true enemy. We need to fortify ourselves. You put on the body armor to prevent bullets from piercing your heart, yet your heart is killing you from the inside. We need to fortify our bodies, put on the armor from the inside out, my friends. I don't know if I have mentioned this or if you knew this, but statistically, nationwide, it's widely known. You can look this up. About 2/3 of American adults are considered overweight or obese. There is truly obesity epidemic in this country. And I'm not fat shaming anybody because I have been fat. In fact, with the exception of when I was a competitive fighter and now nearly 50 years old, I have struggled with my weight my entire life. So I would never, ever, ever think to shame any of you. Where you're at is where you're at. And brother, sister, listen to me. It's okay. But we don't want to stay there. 2/3 of adults in the United States are either overweight or obese. That doesn't apply to firefighters and police officers. It may surprise you to know that statistically, firefighters are fatter than the average American. And police officers are quite a bit fatter than the average American. In fact, I've seen statistics that show that up to 80% of our law enforcement community is either overweight or obese. That should not be. And we need to do something about it. You know it, and I know it. And I want to talk very frank with you right now. I want to talk very blunt to you right now. Because as someone who has struggled with obesity, as someone who has struggled. See, when I was competing as a powerlifter, I was large on purpose. I competed in the 275-pound weight division. I usually walked around about 285, 290 pounds, and I would diet down to 275 for competition. I did eat my way up to 305 pounds at one time and competed as a super heavyweight in powerlifting. Didn't do super well, so I dropped back down in weight. Around 2008, I had a powerlifting training accident where I actually fractured my spine. And I had to retire from competing. And so while I was no longer lifting as hard and as heavy and as intensely as I once was, I stayed the same weight. The picture, those of you watching on YouTube, the picture that I showed you of me barbecuing in my green shirt that looks like a tent would have been after I fractured my spine and was no longer competing in powerlifting, but I kept the weight on. And it slowly went from being a solid 280, 290, 300 pounds, which it was never fully solid. I always had a fat gut. It went from being more solid, we should say, to being very soft, because I could not lift as hard as I used to be able to. Knowing that threw me into a depression. And it seems like genetics are against me, okay? Do you feel that way? Like, oh, some people have it so easy. They can eat whatever they want, and it doesn't bother them. I know people like that. They're the type of people I'd like to tase and pepper spray at the same freaking time, okay? The gym I go to, I love the owners of this gym, but he's about my age, a little younger than me, and he's in fantastic shape. His name's Kurt. And he's like, I wish I could get my diet in order. I just eat like garbage. Here's a guy who has a six-pack. He looks great. And I'm like, your eating's not in order. Your nutrition's not on point. He can eat whatever he wants, and he just stays the same weight. Eventually, Kurt's going to catch up to you, buddy. It's going to catch up to all of us. But if you're anything like me, your genetics suck. Okay, that's everybody. Yeah, I have strength genetics. As I told you before, I could bench press 100 pounds when I was in 4th grade. Strongest kid in my school without question. But I was portly, I was chubby. My mom called me husky. Oh, you're not fat, you're just husky. Well, I was husky for a lot of years, Mom. Thanks for the genetics. Look, we need to take ownership of ourselves. We need to take ownership of our lives. We need to take ownership of where we are. Where you are is fine, but it shouldn't stay that way. If you are obese, if you are overweight, if you struggle with high blood pressure, they call high blood pressure hypertension the silent killer because it will eventually kill you. It will. Maybe you suffer from diabetes, type 2 diabetes, brought on because of your obesity. Being obese causes so many problems. This metabolic disease. Your body does not use insulin correctly. It becomes insulin resistant. It just one thing after another, it starts combating and fighting you. And by the time you get too fat, too obese, you've probably got non-alcohol fatty liver disease, which is dangerous and deadly. And the visceral fat is building up around your organs, And that's what's killing law enforcement officers and firefighters. We've got to do something about it. So, I'm not one to just preach and to give you gloom and doom. Let's talk about what you can do. What did I do? Because I tried everything. I tried everything. And the answer, my friends, is not surgery. The answer is not all these new semi-glutides. The answer is not any crazy, freaking, radical, extreme diet. Here at Frontline Fitness, we advocate a rational, reasonable diet of single ingredient, whole, healthy food. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the least processed, the better. Okay? I don't want you to get pedantic and go crazy over this. I don't. But, you know, technically, the majority of your meals should come from a single source. I mean, like, what I mean by that is chicken breast and green beans and maybe a potato. Okay? Rather than something out of a cardboard box. Okay, whole, healthful foods. But I'm going to give you 3 tips right now. 3 things that I did that worked. They absolutely worked to help lower my body fat, increase my muscle, and make me healthy. Gives me a blood pressure of 106/58 I'm almost 50 years old. The first thing is this: walking. Walking. I walk everywhere. I just hung up the keys. Yeah, I will drive if I have a long ways to go. But most of us don't have very far to go. If I'm going to the grocery store and I only need a few items, I throw an empty backpack on. I walk to the grocery store. I buy my stuff, I put it in the backpack, and I walk home. I walk to the gym, which is a mile away, and I work out at the gym. And then I walk home. I walk everywhere. You should start walking everywhere. And I would suggest you walk first thing in the morning. Because here's the beautiful thing about walking first thing in the morning. Wake up, go for a walk. Do not eat, just go for a walk. Now, I know some people are really dyed in the wool. Hey, you need to have your fasted. You got to be fasted when you exercise. Okay? And I know technically the science shows no, it's calories in, calories out to lose weight. But what I love about exercising, doing a walk, a 45-minute, I do an hour usually. I take my dog for a walk for an hour in the morning before I do anything else. I love the fact that I have just burned calories before I even consumed one for the day. It just puts me in a better mood, puts me in a better position, puts me in a better position for the rest of the day calorically. Go for a walk every day. Rain, shine, snow, every day. Wake up. Make sure you get your good sleep. Make sure you go and you prioritize sleep. But wake up an hour before you have to do something. Hour and a half before you have to do something. Go for a walk. A walk. And walk back home, and then you can have a healthful breakfast. That's number 1. Start walking everywhere. Hang up the keys. You patrol officers, you law enforcement officers, you're in a car most of your shift. You don't need to be in a car when you're home. Yeah, it takes extra time. Your family needs to understand. You need to get your family's buy-in on this. They need to understand that if they want you around, if they want mom or dad to be around long term, to play with the grandkids, to wrestle with the grandkids in the grass, to be able to pick them up and play and have this long, healthful life, you've got to take some time for yourself. And so maybe your wife or maybe your husband doesn't like the fact that you're walking to the grocery store, or that you're walking to church, or that you're walking to see your friends instead of driving. You need to explain to them why this is important. Start walking. Those 10,000 steps a day, get a step counter and try to hit that 10,000 steps a day. But that's not all. You need to be working out and lifting weights as well. We're going to go into exactly how to lift weights, the periodization, the proper technique, all of those things. But we're keeping it basic today. Start walking. You need to start moving more. Move your body. Prioritize walking. Number 2, prioritize protein intake. I am not talking about being crazy, oh, I'm keto, I'm carnivore, I'm vegan, no. But you need to prioritize protein. Because as you start losing weight, protein does so many good things. It helps you maintain muscle mass. And there is something called the thermic effect of food. What that essentially is this. Your body takes a certain amount of energy in order to digest certain foods. Fat is the easiest to process, and it turns into fat easier than anything else. Carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, they take less calories, less energy to process in your body than protein. So prioritize protein, lean protein. I eat chicken. Chicken is a staple in my diet. Fish, lean cuts of meat. I'm talking 93% ground beef is the fattiest ground beef that I eat. Prioritize lean protein in your diet. Try to get a 0.5 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. I know that they say usually a 0.5 gram to 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Look at your body weight. Try to get a 0.5 gram per pound of body weight. Try to at least start there. Prioritize protein. Finally, you need to take inventory, my friend. You need to take inventory of what you are eating. Get yourself a food scale. Get yourself a macro tracker. There's several good ones out there. I have used MyFitnessPal. It's great. I prefer Chronometer. Chronometer is easier to use for me. Has a little scanning on its the free portion of it. You can scan the barcode of your food. It's simple and it's easy. But you need to know what the enemy is. You need to know what you're putting in your mouth. I guarantee you're taking in so many more calories than you think. It would probably shock you. The first time that you start weighing your food and you look at what a serving is, it blows your mind. You're like, that's a serving? A serving of granola? That's what I'm supposed to eat, is one serving of granola? That looks like bird food for my parakeet. That's a squirrel. A squirrel could eat that. I'm a man, But you start learning and seeing how much you're consuming. Because we're overnourished in this country. We're not burning the energy, and we're consuming too much of it. And it is killing us. The old stereotype of law enforcement officers loving their donuts, or firefighters sitting around the firehouse doing nothing but cooking the latest, greatest gourmet meals. Unfortunately, there's some truth to both of those things. And we've lost control of ourselves. We need to love ourselves enough to take the steps required to make ourselves healthy, to heal our hearts, to protect our heart, not only by putting on the body armor, but securing our hearts from the inside. Love your family enough to prioritize your health. Your family wants you around. Your kids need you around. Society needs you around. You are honorable. You are a warrior who is on the front lines, sacrificing your time and your effort to protect other people. It's time that you protect yourself. Prepare yourself and protect yourself by losing weight, eating nutritious foods, and exercising. We're going to get into these far more in future episodes, but for now, if there's just a few takeaways. 1, heart disease is killing you. Obesity is going to kill you. It's going to make your life worse. It's going to hamper your retirement dreams and goals. And it's probably making, not probably, it is absolutely making you less safe while on duty. Number 2, you can change it. Start by something as simple as walking. Now people say, well, if walking is good, running's better, right? No, not necessarily. Start with walking. If you're not in an exercise program, go see your doctor, of course. I mean, they always say go see your doctor, make sure that you can exercise. But I say start with walking. Couple reasons. Running is great. Fine. It's a great zone 2 cardiovascular exercise. For me, it's a little hard on my knees. Secondly, running has been shown to make you more hungry. So you may burn more calories when you're out running than you do when you're walking. But when you get back home, if you do not watch the rebound effect, you will find yourself eating that 3rd bowl of Fruit Loops because the running made you so hungry. Walking does not have the same effect. So go walk. Walk everywhere. Start moving. Get your 10, 12, 15,000 steps a day. Start resistant training, exercising, and track your calories. Prioritize protein. Track your calories. Know what you're consuming. Know what you're taking in. We are adults. You are an adult. It is time you took ownership of your choices and your decisions. Your decisions give you the results that you have now. Your decisions and all the things that you have done in the past are what have led you to where you are now. And if you are not in a good, healthy situation, it's because of weeks, months, or even years of bad choices. Change that now. Commit to change that now. Comment below. Comment, I'm changing now. Changing. Just comment changing. Do it for yourself. Do it for your loved ones. But do it. I'm Carl Wimmer. This is Frontline Fitness. Just reminding you, be good to yourself, be good to others, and as always, stay safe.